and I, being a kid, it's like, wow, clinkety clink clink, and my mother's sitting there like, and Catherine was very kind and very mellow, and it was okay. And on the second occasion, I remember visiting, I walked in, and she had a little clinkety clink piano for me. It was just this little blue piano, so I could sit there and play my piano while they could talk.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know, thinking back on it now as an adult, that was so kind, you know, but I didn't know her well, but what I knew is she was a very kind, very gentle woman. And I was, you know, we had known her, but it's okay. You know, we're getting to know her. Wow.
I was a latecomer on the scene getting to know Nana Dunphy. And I came east in June of 1970 with Eleanor, and we were going to have a very quiet get-together with her mother. So, after meeting her, not at Tobacco Valley, in Massachusetts, we came up to LeMay's, and Eleanor reminded me, this is going to be a very quiet time now.
We're hiding.
And in the next week, I met 100 Dunphys. So that was my introduction to Nana. She had a large family.
Forgotten that.
They met 100 Dunphys. Well, like Colleen, we didn't really have a chance to get to know her, but I did get to know her through my grandmother, who was Uncle Richie's wife. And she always said how gracious and kind she was. So that's pretty much it. But again, we're getting to know the family.
So I guess one of my favorite memories was going to LeMay's, and like many of you have said, like she's entertains, you know, and I was young, a little kid. So she's able to have a conversation with adults and knows how to keep, you know, the younger one busy. So she always had this desk, and this is what I remember, and I think the third drawer down, she'd pull it out, and in the third drawer there was always something, either a toy or some interesting thing that would be occupy some child's. So I would go and, you know, look forward to that every time as to whatever she had for me. And also through the years, just the letter writing back and forth. Marianne and I were talking about this earlier. We would get the coolest cards from Nana. Like she would scrapbook and send us all kinds of things. And then we got into the habit of sending like tubes with, you know, like our note would be inside the tube and you plug each in. I mean, the stuff that we used to send through the mail, it's amazing that it even got delivered back in those days. But it was a lot of fun, and I really still enjoy like scrapbooking and doing that with pictures and photos to this day.
I didn't know Nana, but I got a great granddaughter.
Yeah.
And we're happy about that. I would like to mention on the family website, KateandRoysNation.com. You should go to it and listen to Ruthie Dunphy. Now, she was the daughter of my oldest brother, and she and her sister Marilyn and their two brothers lived in Ohio. And every year they would drive out to spend at least part of the summer with us at Hampton Beach in a cottage that was already spilling over. And so I mention that because Ruthie has the most wonderful remembrances of my dad. And it's really, I think, even if you never met, because she and I think you had maybe some shadow of memory, but the others, none of the others did, because he died so young. So we, of course, he was the orchestra leader, number one. He loved music. He was a drummer, and when you think of it, working in the factory all day, the mills, and then having these gigs at night as a side, that entrepreneurial spirit was in him, really embedded. And his 8 sons, I think each had a dominant quality that my dad had. And I think today it's very important to make reference to Bob and Jeanette, and Bob's children are here, and Kyle, who might have had to leave by now, and Marianne. We're really celebrating Bob's. It's the 7th Jeanette, 2016. And I mentioned Bob because he was my father's right-hand guy, because the first 6 of them, my 3 older brothers went into the service, and then my 3 sisters went in the convent, and Bob was left as a 15-year-old to run the store with my dad. And my mother writes a tribute in the book to Bob. She said she felt that the boys and girls that stayed behind deserved medals as well, because they were on the home front. And Bob was just the one you could count on. Always dependable, could always count. We have him to thank for so much, especially his ties to Ireland. And we have had the great gift of his generosity. So that hospitality and that hospitable spirit really came from my parents. My mother in a more quiet way, but she had a great wit. And my dad, in his ebullient, you had Walter, and you had Bob, you had Roy. Walter and Roy were very like my dad in their personalities. And Roy Dunphy, my dad, brother Richie, was a genius, probably. Artist, musician, and just, I think, a traveler of the world in his own way. And fortunately, along the way, fortunately for us, but not for your grandmother, he found his way to Maine and fell in love with Josie, beautiful, beautiful woman. And they had 2 daughters. My mother and dad, with your father Bob, who was 6 weeks or 6 months old, still nursing, went from Lowell in a car up to what town? Wilton, Maine, to stand up for Richie and their grandmother. And my mother said that she was so grateful that they could be there and you can imagine the trip that they had to. So you made the trip to the funeral.
It's up there.
Of their grandmother, and that brought us back together. Yeah. I'd say at the end about my dad, your grandfather, great-grandfather, that Rick Dunphy had the line, really, that we all remembered. He couldn't keep our names straight. And he would get at the register, and he would need something or someone, and he would say, "Hey, Dunphy," and we'd all turn around and he'd point to the one he wanted. And he may not have known our names, but he knew us because we all had to go to the store. They all had to go to the store when the next one was born. So my dad knew his sons especially, and if there's anything that made them successful, it's because they knew their parents so well. And there was always a song in that, guys. It said some people die with the song still in them. And that was not Roy Dunphy. Roy Dunphy sang his way through strife and stress, and it got him through. I spoke too long, but
I have to follow that?
Once upon a time,
Still get it, Mike.
you have followed me very well.
So obviously I didn't know my great-grandfather, but I knew Nana Dunphy. She passed when I was 12, and I don't have like very like specific like great moments, but more just I remember visiting her up at the apartment in LeMays when I was very little. I remember seeing her up at Wallace Sands, and certainly all of the reunions, and it was always very exciting for me. Like I'm going to see my great-grandmother, and you know, everyone called her Nana Dunphy, and I was one of the older we had a lot of cousins of my generation that were much younger than Paul and I, that were way down, but we were kind of the older. Well, yeah, well, except for Roy's kids, but they were out in Ohio, so we never saw them. So everyone said Nana Dunphy, but I always called her Great Nana, and I have a card that I got back, you know, that I had given her for her birthday, that, you know, and I wrote, you know, Great Nana, because it was, to me, it was something a little more special, you know. I had my grandmothers, but this is my great-grandmother. So it's just those memories, and just being the family and visiting her for her birthday and whatnot. And I remember after she had passed, I was kind of afraid that, well, this is going to be the end of our family reunions and connections. And I remember going to Uncle Walter, and because the last reunions were there when she was still with us, and I said to him, I said, you know, can we still have these family reunions, you know? And he said, of course. So now I'm 12 at the time, and I'm not expecting this, but so he says, everybody may have your attention. Young Michael here has something to say. Now I panicked, and I just stepped on. We're going to continue to have the family reunions. And that was it. So, and I will share one last quick story. I don't recall this, but I've been told this story, that my grandparents, Paul and Rita, brought me up one time, just myself, to visit Nana at LeMays, and we went downstairs to have dinner, and my grandparents asked me what I wanted, and I said lobster.
Oh.
Great Nana was like, and they're like, well, if that's what he wants, and so I ate my whole lobster. So I've loved lobster ever since, and I guess hence the shirt today.
Michael didn't tell you, what did you write for the next reunion, that next year after Nana had died? You wrote the wonderful tribute of the song to the song.
The leader of the band?
The
No,
leader?
my parent, my mother, Donna and
Donna.
Gail.
I have it if you want.
But
The leader of the
It
clan.
is the most beautiful, the leader of the clan, and it was, of course, the leader of the band. And it was, do you
I have that song, it's in the songbook, and I actually had it marked for maybe
Is
singing
that
it today.
right? We'll have to
But
maybe.
Maybe not me. Maybe someone else.
We
with a
need John
better
on the
voice.
guitar for that one.
I know.
That would be perfect.
I know when you talked about the notes that I have the original round robins, they used to call them, and some of your fathers wrote these, and they're 6, 7, 8-year-olds writing to their big brother Paul and to Bud and to Jack when they were in the service. Nana wrote to them every day, and then she'd do these round robins once a week, and each kid had to write something to the older siblings. So the writing,
Yeah, I
the
researched
singing.
everything from the
From
Green
that.
Book and some other things I had.
wonderful. Do you think we want to sit down?
But
I
I just don't want to break it, and
I
we gotta feed